What's going on, everyone? Well, we got the conclusion for the Kimono Lady, as well as Fatima. I imagine that there's going to be some aftermath, right? Like, I would imagine that, you're going to get Fatima kind of dealing with the post-pregnancy. Elgin, obviously, he's all tore up. What's going to happen with him? Does the Kimono Lady go and reveal herself to him again and maybe kind of try to, like, corrupt him and turn him against the town, right? Going to be interesting to kind of see how it plays out. However, one of the things that I'm a little disappointed in with the Kimono storyline, and I see a lot of people just in general weren't very high on the Kimono and Fatima pregnancy storyline, right? I did feel like it was kind of a little bit lackluster. I get like the big shock and surprise was that, oh, it wasn't a baby. It was, Smiley and his return. And I don't know. I felt one, it was very predictable. I felt two, it was kind of a little... Like, I just feel like you could have done other things that would have been a better kind of main story arc. But also, like, the Kimono Lady didn't really go anywhere, right? Like, what is she? Who is she? Right? Like, obviously, you can look at various mythologies and stuff like that and come to your own conclusion, but it would have been nice to know, and look, maybe we get that, but it would have been nice to know, okay, like, what does the show interpret her as? Right? Is she the first one to give birth in Fromville and died many moons ago and her spirit's there? Is she the one that, is responsible for convincing people to sacrifice their children for immortality? Like, there's a million ways that they could approach this. Also, another thing that really bothers me is the guy in the, in that little room that Fatima was in was for, like, no reason. Right? Like, it was just aesthetic. That's all it was. It was literally just for aesthetic purposes. So you could just visualize and see a dead body in there. Right? Like, it didn't serve a point. Like, I thought, like, oh, is it the Kimono Lady's husband? Or is it, like, one of the characters? Especially now you have time travel and all this stuff, right? So maybe it was, like, Jade or, Boyd. People thought it was Boyd because of the outfit. And it turned out, no, it was just a body. It served no purpose, no point. But From has done that a lot with certain things, right? Like, when they keep, like, I kind of want to go over, not in this video, I want to kind of keep it the Kimono Lady, but, I mean, we have 2 years, or minimum a year and some change, but probably could be as long as 2 years. So, got a lot of time to kind of flush through a bunch of different ideas and stuff like that, but I really want to go over all the things that From has set up and went nowhere. And, like, the guy laying in the middle of the room is one of those things. I felt like there was an opportunity to tell a story there to kind of add to, like, the sort of mythos that you're creating. And instead, it just was for nothing. And you kind of did that in a lot of ways with the Kimono Lady. I get the Kimono Lady was the manipulator, right? She, instead of Sarah hearing the voices in her head, it was, you got to see, like, the embodiment representation for Elgin, right? But the problem with that, like, when it's just voices, like with Sarah, you don't have the curiosity of the story. It's just like, okay, it's just in her head. It's Fromville messing with her. It's Fromville kind of manipulating her, right? Like, the voices she hears in her head is just this place kind of doing the manipulation tactic, right? But you don't see what it is, so you kind of just take it as, like, it's this, it's just like, it's Fugazi, it's just this thing, right? But when you actually see the embodiment of this creature or spirit or whatever she is, and you see the kind of influence she begins to have on Elgin, and you see kind of the devil on the shoulder, right? And then she's the one that takes the baby from Fatima and takes the baby down into the tunnels. So clearly she has a connection to the monsters. Is she the one that birthed the first monster? Right? Like, so is it something where, say all the monsters we've seen, right? We know that that they sacrifice their children to live forever, right? That they sacrifice children for immortality. But who's to say that before, right, they became the monsters, they had to die and be reborn, right? So, for example, they were human. they sacrifice their children. They are rewarded with immortality, but you have to go through this metamorphosis, right? So you end up having them die, and then the Kimono Lady was like the mother that birthed all of the monsters, right? Like that is something that I think would be interesting. But are they going to elaborate into that story? Are we going to get that connection between the Kimono Lady and the monsters? Right? Because the monsters and her seemed to know what each other were. She seemed very familiar with the process that was happening with Fatima and very familiar with the baby and all that stuff, right? Like, I would like to see something where, we get a little more information on her. The problem is, I don't think we will. I think they'll just kind of let that be and just, hey, that was, or you'll just get some dialogue in passing at some random point, right? Some random point, you'll get some like, oh, she was, that's why like the Kimono Lady gave birth to the children or whatever, right? Like kind of like, like with Fatima, where we got the story of the monsters, right? It's just kind of like this in passing, right? Like they're just, instead of having a scene or something to show it, it's just like, oh yeah, they sacrificed their children. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, sure. Right. I feel like it's a missed opportunity to really kind of expand on some stuff and add to, again, the sort of mythos of Fromville. Add to like, what is she? Again, maybe she's the mother of all monsters, right? She's the one that kind of just bred and she was the first one to give birth to these monsters. Right? And like I said, maybe they had to die. And then they die and then are reborn as the monsters in the cocoon, little cocoon looking thing as we saw with Smiley. Right? I think that could be a cool kind of like connection. I think that could be a cool little thing. And it's a simple, easy explanation. Like, right? Like she was this just normal person like everyone else. She was Fatima before Fatima. Right? And, it even begs the question, like, was this Fatima in a past life? Possibly, right? Like, especially now that we know that we have the reincarnation and stuff. But I just think you could have had an easy kind of tie-in to, like, she is the mother of all monsters. She was Fatima before Fatima. She gave birth to, the first, the 5 monsters or whatever. And then over time, and then, like the teenage one is why... it was her kid or something like that, right? Like you could have these explanations. You could have these kind of tie-ins. Like you could kind of tell this story of the Kimono Lady and just kind of give us, because like my thing is like, it feels like sometimes, and maybe this is just me, but it feels like sometimes that they begin a story, but they continue to leave loose ends rather than like properly concluding the story, or they start a story and it goes nowhere, such as like Boyd trapping a monster, right? Like I understand he got distracted and all this other stuff, but like you establish this like, oh, Boyd's gonna capture a monster, how's that gonna play out? Like you created this like level of excitement and then it went nowhere. The Village is another one. Right? You establish this village with this monster that's out there, and all the crops just magically appear and all this stuff. And so far, it's gone nowhere. Now, again, the Village, I think, will continue to be a story point in season 4. So I'm not like super concerned about that. But like Boyd trapping the monster, that's something that I could just see them completely just, ignoring. The Kimono Lady, I could see season 4 just completely ignoring. Right? And I think that's unfortunate, because I do think that you could tell a pretty fun, unique, interesting story in the Kimono Lady, right? Like, I think you could give us, like, an interesting sort of insight into, like, the world of, the monsters, and she was the first monster, and she gave birth, or not the first monster, but the mother of all the monsters, and she died, so her spirit stuck around, right? Because she died in the beginning, just like you saw with the Ankui kids and all that stuff, right? Like, she is the mother version of that. She created the monsters, right? Like, I think that would be an easy, fun, just simple story that you don't have to get too crazy or do all this craziness with, and yeah, Fatima give birth to a monster, and it's like, okay, there's the connection. I just felt like she was just kind of there to, like, lead Elgin down a dark path, but why have the symbolism? Why actually get to see the character if you're not going to actually develop the character? You know what I mean? But look, like I said, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my opinion. Maybe it's just my thoughts. That's why, as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know yours down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree and think that, like, yes, they should have done a better job of, like, kind of explaining the Kimono Lady and what she is and what she does and kind of giving us a story about her? Again, it could have been a quick, like how Fatima explained the monsters. It could have been a quick little thing, right? Like, Fatima could have even explained the Kimono Lady in the process of explaining the monsters, right? Quick, easy, simple, done, over with, not too complicated, boom. But again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it either way, so let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thanks.